everyone, Princess Moonfall here. I hope you're all doing wonderful and great. Today I wanted to do something different. I actually went on Reddit and found some scary stories. And it's different from my usual content where I usually talk about stuff like events and stuff, which I will still do, but I wanted to try something new. I hope you enjoy!
The first story we are reading is from OK Combination 6967. For context, I live about 30 minutes out of the city, in a wooded area. Closest neighbours are about 2 to 3 miles down the road. Could have very well been a human, which is a lot more scary to me. But I'm not so sure. Thought I'd share here as it very much so felt paranormal and made my hair stand up. Last night, I was woken up by my dog crying at the back door. I look at the time and it's about 3:30 a.m. I think to myself, that's weird, as he never needs to be let out at this time. I get up, turn on the porch lights, and let him out. He was hesitant to go out when I opened the door, which is also weird for him. I watch as he runs over to the back fence and starts barking. This wasn't his normal bark. He basically sounded and looked like Kuho, alarmed. As I've never seen him that distressed, I open the door and call out to him to come back inside. That is when I hear it. Whistling. Sounded like someone whistling a song. I don't see anything at this point, but still freaked out because I'm not sure who the hell would be on my property at this time, let alone at all really. I'm desperately trying to get him to come in, but he's fixated on whatever he's barking at. I run to the kitchen to grab his treats, hoping to bribe him inside. I come back to the door, and I hear someone or something barking back at my dog, but in a high-pitched voice. It sounded like when a human barks like a dog, if that makes sense. I look towards where the noise is coming from and can barely make out what look glowing eyes staring out of the forest. The whistling starts again for a moment, and soon as I shook his treats and called out to him, I hear a very loud and deep growl, not from my dog. It didn't sound human either. That noise sounded like a very mad, very large animal or something. My dog comes running in the door, straight past me and his treats, right into his crate. I slam the door and lock it, brought him into my room with me, and barricaded us in there till daylight. I could reason the growling to be a bear or mountain lion. But what was the whistling and human-like barking? Not sure what that was, but it was enough to scare my dog to the point where he was trembling and panting. He's a German Shepherd and he's a big, brave boy. I've never seen him that upset.
This story is from Pain Last 2363. My girlfriend and I recently moved into a new apartment in a new city and had something strange happen last night. We always stay up late on our days off and go to bed about 2 to 3 a.m. Last night we laid down after watching a movie and were beginning to go to sleep. I was in that part of sleep where you're sort of awake and sort of asleep, so it's hard to tell what's going on, and I heard a whistle come from my living room. It was the kind of whistle someone does when they are trying to get someone's attention. Wee woo. I opened my eyes and looked around and didn't see anything, but it scared me because it was so real. I knew my girlfriend was probably still awake, so I said, "Did you hear that?" And she instantly responded, "Hear what?" So I assumed it was just me hearing stuff because I was falling asleep, and that happens to me all the time, so I went back to bed. This morning when we were getting in the car, my girlfriend says, "Hey, I didn't want to scare you last night, but I heard that whistle too. It feels like someone is watching me when I go to sleep, and I find myself looking out into the living room often at night, trying to see if someone is there. My cats have been meowing excessively at night, specifically when we are going to bed, which is unusual for them. I've had very few paranormal experiences in my life, so I'm kind of a skeptic and not sure what I believe. My girlfriend said she's been hearing stuff at night when I'm at work, and that the chairs in the kitchen have been in different spots, then she left them multiple times. Any insight would be helpful, thanks."
Next story is from Bulldog H20. I am a service tech who gets into a lot of homes, businesses and abandoned warehouses. 20 years ago, I had a work order for a local residence to service their water softener. I entered the home, met the missus, and headed for the basement, where the equipment was located. As I worked, I could hear the mister working in his woodshop a few doors away. He was cheery. I could tell from his pleasant tune that he whistled over and over. I finished up after about 25 minutes and wrote up the billing invoice, and at that I walked over to the woodshop to explain it to him. When I approached the door to the shop, all noises stopped. I peeked my head inside to find the room empty and dark. The saws and equipment neatly stowed with little evidence that it had been used recently. Could have sworn, but must have gone upstairs when I was working. So, I proceeded to deliver the slip upstairs to the missus. I mentioned to her that I was going to explain the repair to her hubby, but he left his shop before I could see him. It was at this point that nearly all colour drained from her face and distress obviously appeared. I kept hearing the tune that he whistled in my head and blew a few phrases out so she could hear. She began to tear up and told me that her husband had passed away suddenly a few weeks back. The tune I whistled was so familiar to her, as he had whistled it over many years, but especially when he was woodworking in his shop. As I left, I couldn't help thinking about how that spirit must be watching over his living wife. And I wasn't fearful. Nice, huh?
This story is from Copickerels 2021. Near my house is an abandoned high school in a not-so-great part of town that's been closed for about 20 years. All windows were boarded up, but there were a few entrances that were wide open. We checked out about half of the building, and we were hearing this whistling noise that started in a middle pitch and got higher on the second and third floor of the building, and I heard it every few seconds, and the pitch of the whistle was consistent with no differences between the whistles. On the ground floor, dead silent. We originally thought this was either a gang call whistle of a street gang, but it didn't sound human-like. The wind was almost stilt, so it can't be that. Is it possible the building may have paranormal activity? My friend did see some kind of spirit or ghost that looked like a child hiding behind the door on the second floor. Anyone got an opinion or idea on what this whistling noise could be?
This story is from the Redditor Vicandon. I turned my head and I saw a huge face right in front of me. It looked really surprised and scared, and it had wide eyes and a long mouth, and it was very pale. I saw it for about 2 seconds. I have never seen anything up close and so vivid like that in my life. I think that the veil is getting thinner, and I am not safe in my own home anymore. Be careful, everyone. I wish the best for all of you. It resembles those scary edited images that used to be on the internet in the early 2010s, if anyone remembers those. A lot of weird things have been happening to me recently, and it's getting more intense. I think that something bad is going to happen soon in the world.
The story, if from the Redditor complex, Economist 565. IF was in my early 20s, hitchhiking the west coast of the USA. I had been dropped off in the outskirts of LA. Exploring the area, I discovered a discreet and overgrown section of cemented canal. I set up my tent there and had an uneventful night. Don't do this. Flash floods are real. In the morning, I left the tent with a few heavier, replaceable items, dog food, canned goods, and went into the city proper to busk. When I returned to camp, my heart sank when I noticed my tent was on the other side of the trickling stream in the canal. I thought someone had vandalized or stolen some of my things. I opened the tent to find everything as I had left it. Exactly as I had left it. I started to gaslight myself. You were tired last night and excited this morning. You came in off a different street. Still, I felt uneasy. It was too late to find a different spot, so I resigned myself to moving my tent back across the stream. I curled up with my dog in my lap and my knife at my side in case whoever moved my tent came back. Unable to fall asleep, I read by the light of a street lamp. The book distracted me from the day's events, yet sleep did not come. Hours passed. How many I cannot say. Eventually, the soft hum of hungry mosquitoes was cut with the rhythmic click-clack of claws on cement. A sense of dread washed over me. I grabbed my knife in one hand and pulled my dog in closer to keep her calm and quiet. My blood froze as the footsteps drew closer. I listened. It only sounded like the one critter, no human accompanying it. Trying to calm down, I thought, no need to worry, no need to bother it. It will pass. Until the steps stopped, directly across the stream. It paused, then began sniffing and scratching at the ground. Curiosity got the better of me, and I slowly shifted myself to peek through the netting at the top of the tent. I saw a ghastly creature lurking right where my tent had been. This thing was black and patterned with dust. It was barrel-chested and hunchbacked with feet that looked too large for it. The creature had a mane of fur from the face down the back to when a tail should have been, and the rest of its skin was pulled tight against bone. It couldn't have been more than 30 pounds, half the size of my dog, yet I was terrified of it. My gut told me I did not want this thing to see me, so I scrunched myself back down. I gripped my dog and knife tightly as I listened. It paced back and forth, stopping to scratch or sniff. Its demeanor grew more frantic. Its pace quickened. It began growling and snapping its jaws in the air. I waited silently, knife poised, for what felt like forever. Suddenly it stopped. It turned and casually headed back down the canal the same way it had come. I could not sleep the rest of the night. I sat there gripping my dog and knife until the sun rose. At the first sign of day, I packed everything up. Before I left, curiosity got the better of me again. I crossed the stream and looked where the creature had been. The ground was littered with scratch marks. I took a deep breath and left. I've never been back to Leh since then. Never before or since have I been scared of an animal like that. I can't be certain what happened that dim, humid night. All I know is I will carry that feeling for the rest of my life. That feeling of being prey to something unnatural. Something sharp, hungry, and skittering. Chupacabra. The story is from the Redditor Anxiety Freak 2. Me, my sister, my mom, and my stepmom were all living in a 2-bedroom apartment at the time. One morning on a weekend, and my sister were both sleeping in. I forgot what I was dreaming about at that time, but I remember everything going black and me hearing my name be called. I woke up to see what was going on. I assumed it was my mom calling us because my sister, who was fast asleep in the bunk above me, heard it too. We went to the kitchen to find my mom and stepmom in the middle of a conversation. I asked her what she needed, and she asked me what I was talking about. I asked if she called us, and she said no. Neither of them had. The thing about my sister is, she is a heavy sleeper. So if we both heard it, who the hell was it? Why did we both hear it? This next post is from the Redditor Redenshow. So, today as I was going for a coffee, I decided to check out a new cafe that just opened. As I go near the door, I am surprised and happy to see an ex-girlfriend of mine from when I was a kid. We stare at each other for a second, and then I see she mumbles something and then comes towards me. I go in for the hug, and after we greet, she just says, "Do you remember what you've done to me?" I was baffled. We dated many years ago, and we never had issues of any kind. No major fights, no abuse, no toxicity. As a matter of fact, she left me because I would not commit, but remained on good terms for a while after, still hanging out, until she found a job abroad and left. At first I was scared shitless and immediately thought there was something strange. I asked to be more specific, but she wasn't telling. After a little chit-chat, she told me she was referring to the time me and a friend cleansed her house. It came back to me then. At the time we were stupid, edgy, semi-goth kids really into the weird and otherworldly stuff. After she complained about feeling her house was weird, a friend from our group offered to do some cleansing ritual, which he did while we were basically half drunk. According to her, when 7 years later she talked about this thing with other people, Shit started to hit the fan. Like you could feel presence around the house, drops of temperature, all the good stuff. She was very vague, but apparently she believes some kind of ghost is now possessing her house. Something apparently unleashed after that thing we did, and she started telling about it to her friends, because nothing happened in the years prior. She then got back to England, but promptly came back here to escape from an abusive fiancé. At that point I was really nervous and I excused myself. She hugged me, says now there is only Christ in her heart, and that we should really have a cup of coffee. This gave me really weird vibes, like weird cult stuff. I basically ran away terrified. Keep in mind, we split on good terms. Very good. She looked after my dog while I was in England. As a masseuse, she took care of my bad back for months. She even introduced me to her new boyfriend, and we went out for dinner a couple of times, as a group. There is no way she could have held animus against me. Hell, once abroad, she even offered to help find a job for me in the city she was currently living in. This was not a prank done to get back at me. And more so, her eyes. She once was the light of the room, always laughing and cracking jokes. The person I found was sad, with very still eyes, not smiling, not anything. Like a completely different person. English is not my primary language, so I probably cannot explain myself. Me and GF lived in the same city in Italy, and hanged around at her place very often. Suppose cleansing happen at her place. She leaves me. She gets with another guy and they leave for England. 7th years pass. During COVID, she returns to Italy because her man was abusive. At this point, she tells other people about that sort of ritual, and shit starts to happen.
Well, that was our video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I think to me the most scariest story was OK Combination, because that hit home with me with my dogs, because I don't have kids, I have dogs, and anyone who knows me knows I love my dogs. So I could see myself freaking out about my dogs when I'm like, here, come here, come here, come here, and they're like, no, I'm getting this thing. But to be honest, all these stories are absolutely terrifying, and I hate they had to live through it, but it really they really all kind of unsettled me in a way, and that's why I put these stories in this video, because they're really creepy. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see y'all later.